In the great hall of the Galactic Union, size decided everything. The ceiling was so high that clouds drifted near the lights. Massive beings filled the chamber, towering insect lords, stone-skinned generals, glowing energy forms that hummed with power. Their voices were loud. Their presence demanded attention. At the very center of the hall, two tiny figures waited. They were the twins. Their names were Tila and Rin, and together they were smaller than a single human arm. Their bodies were thin and light, shaped by a peaceful low-gravity world. Soft wings shimmered behind their backs, trembling from fear and exhaustion. They had traveled a long way, and hope was the only fuel they had left. Tila held a crystal tablet with shaking hands. Rin stayed close, their fingers tightly linked, as if letting go would make one of them disappear. When their turn came, the whole barely noticed. "Our homeworld, Morel, is failing," Tila said. Her voice echoed weakly and was nearly swallowed by the noise of the chamber. "Our planet's magnetic core is breaking apart. Solar storms burn our skies. Our shields will not last much longer." Rin swallowed and continued, forcing the words out. "We have no war fleet, no rare metals, no political strength, but we are still alive, and we wish to stay that way." For a moment, there was silence. Then the counselors began to turn away. One massive being clicked its mandibles in annoyance. "Your planet offers nothing," it said. "Resources are limited," another voice rumbled. "Evolution removes the weak," said a third, cold and calm. The twins felt the weight of those words, like gravity crushing their fragile bodies. Tila lowered her head. Rin's wings drooped. They had known this might happen. Still, it hurt more than they imagined. They had begged scientists. They had pleaded with engineers. They had bowed before admirals and kings. Everyone had refused. As the council prepared to move on, Rin felt something tighten in their chest. A quiet panic. A thought that refused to die. "There is one more," Rin whispered. Tila looked up in surprise. Rin was already turning. At the far edge of the chamber stood the newest member species of the Union, humans. Most of them were absent. Only one had been sent. His name was Ethan Cole. He stood alone, arms crossed, posture straight but relaxed. Compared to the aliens around him, he was enormous. Thick muscles showed beneath his uniform. His hands were scarred. His boots looked like they could crush stone. He looked like a walking weapon. The twins began to float toward him. Murmurs spread through the hall. Why the human? They are emotional. They are reckless. They lack refinement. Ethan noticed the movement and uncrossed his arms. When he saw the twins approaching, his eyes widened slightly. The twins stopped in front of him. Hovering at chest height, Tila bowed deeply, her wings folding in respect. Rin followed, their voice trembling. "Giant human," Rin said softly, "we know we are small. We know our lives are worth little to this council." Ethan slowly lowered himself to one knee. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Every voice stopped at eye level now. Ethan spoke gently. "You don't need to bow. Tell me what's wrong." Tila looked at him, stunned. No one had ever changed their height for her before. "Our world is dying," she said again, but this time the words came easier. "We don't need weapons. We don't need enemies destroyed. We just need help fixing what is breaking." Ethan listened without interrupting. When she finished, the twins waited, barely breathing. Ethan looked around the chamber. At the council, at the powerful beings who had already decided the twins' fate. Then he looked back at the tiny aliens standing before him. "I can't promise success," he said slowly, "but I can promise this." He placed a finger gently on the floor so they could rest. "Against it, I won't ignore you." The twins felt something they had not felt in a very long time, hope, and across the chamber, for the first time, the Galactic Union realized something dangerous had just happened. The smallest voices had finally been heard. The Galactic Union chamber did not like silence. Powerful beings were used to loud debates, sharp commands, and quick decisions. But after the giant human knelt before the tiny twins, the silence became heavy and uncomfortable, like a truth no one wanted to face. Ethan Cole slowly stood back up. The twins Stilla and Rin remained close to him, their small bodies floating near his chest. They looked safer there, even though no shield protected them. The council noticed that too, and it made many of them uneasy. "You are wasting time," one counselor said. Its voice echoed like stone grinding. "The twins' planet is beyond saving." Ethan turned toward the voice. His face was calm, but his eyes were serious. "They didn't come here for judgment," he replied. "They came for help." A ripple of low laughter moved through the hall. "Help from a human." Another council member mocked. "Your species has barely learned interstellar law." Ethan did not raise his voice. "We learned something more important first," he said. "How it feels to be ignored." Tila listened closely. Rin felt something warm in their chest. The human was not speaking like a soldier. He was speaking like someone who remembered pain. At the center platform, the High Council elder leaned forward. "Human," the elder said, "even our finest engineers failed to stabilize Morel's core. Your kind lacks the technology." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll try something else." "What?" the elder asked. Ethan looked down at the twins. "We'll go there. We'll look with our own eyes. And we won't give up just because it's hard." The hall erupted in noise, reckless, suicidal, typical human thinking. Tila's wings trembled again. She pulled closer to Rin. Maybe we asked too much," she whispered. Ethan heard her. He bent slightly and spoke softly so only they could hear. "You didn't ask for too much. You asked the wrong people first." The council debated for a long time. Some feared humans. Some wanted to see them fail. Others simply didn't care in the end. Permission was granted, not because they believed in Ethan, but because they expected him to fail. A small exploration vessel was prepared. It was not built for humans. The ceiling was low. The corridors were narrow. Controls were delicate. When Ethan stepped inside, the ship creaked under his weight. "Are you sure you can fit?" Rin asked, worried. Ethan smiled. "I've fit into worse places." As the ship left the station, Morel's star appeared on the view screen. Burning, angry, and unstable, Tila watched it in silence. Everyone else turned away. She said quietly, "Why didn't you?" Ethan took a moment to answer. "Humans came from a dangerous world," he said. "Storms, quakes, extinctions. We survived because someone always tried to fix things instead of walking away." Rin tilted their head. "Even when it hurts." "Especially then," Ethan replied. During the journey, the twins noticed small things. Ethan checked his tools again and again. He studied old alien data, even when it made little sense. Sometimes he stared at the stars for a long time, breathing slowly. He was afraid, but he never once suggested turning back. When the ship entered Morel's system, alarms rang immediately. Radiation levels spiked. Magnetic waves twisted the sensors. "This is worse than before," Tila whispered. Ethan tightened his gloves. "Then it's a good thing we came now." As the planet filled the screen, cracked with glowing lines of energy, Rin felt tears form. "If this fails," Rin said, voice breaking, "we will lose everything." Ethan placed a steady hand near them, careful not to crush their fragile bodies. "Then we fail together," he said, but not without trying. The ship descended toward the burning world behind them, far away. The Galactic Union watched. They expected a lesson. They did not realize they were about to witness the beginning of one instead. Morel was not like any world Ethan had seen before. From orbit, it looked beautiful, swirling green oceans, glowing crystal mountains, skies painted with strange auroras. But the beauty was a lie. The closer he got, the more he understood how fragile everything was. Rivers boiled in some places. Cracks in the planet's crust glowed red like molten veins. Shield towers flickered and sparked. And above it all, the stars, magnetic storms raged, beating against the surface with invisible fists. The ship shuddered as it entered the upper atmosphere. Warning lights flashed, alarms screamed, and the tiny twins held on to each other, wings folded tightly against their backs. Tila looked at Ethan with wide eyes. "It's worse than we thought," she whispered. Rin nodded, trying to stay calm. But even their small hands trembled. Ethan's massive frame filled the cockpit as he manipulated the controls. Sweat dripped down his forehead, and every muscle tensed under the planet's crushing gravity. "We'll make it," he said, more to himself than to the twins. "We have to." The landing was rough. The ship scraped against jagged crystal formations, shivering violently as it touched the surface. Outside, the twin suns of Morel barely illuminated the ground, which cracked and hummed with energy surges. The air was thick, and Ethan could feel the static in his skin. "Hold on tight," he said, stepping out. Each footfall made the ground tremble, sending small pebbles bouncing across the glowing cracks. The twins followed closely, floating beside him, their small bodies almost invisible next to his massive frame. Tila's voice quivered. "We've never seen anyone like you. So big and so brave." Ethan only nodded, though he felt no bravery, only a rising tide of responsibility that pressed down harder than the planet's gravity. Their first stop was the ancient shield access station. It had once been enormous, able to house thousands of engineers and energy conduits. Now it was partially collapsed, rusted, and twisted from years of solar bombardment. The entrance was blocked by fallen beams and molten metal. Most beings would have given up. Most beings would have fled. But Ethan crouched down and studied the structure. His large hands tested the metal. "We need to go in," he said quietly. "I can get us through." With strength no one in the Union had expected from a single human, Ethan pried the beams apart, bending metal, cracking stone, making a path where none should exist. Sparks flew, alarms echoed, and the twins floated nervously, fearing the structure might collapse entirely. But Ethan's determination never wavered. "Almost there," he said, voice tight with effort. Inside, the core chamber glowed an angry red. It pulsed violently, threatening to burst through the floor and destroy everything around it. Ancient alien machines hummed, sparking and groaning as they struggled to contain the planet's failing energy. Ethan knelt beside a shattered control panel. "This is worse than the reports," he muttered. "They couldn't even get close." Hours turned into days. Ethan worked tirelessly, rerouting energy flows, patching broken circuits with human ingenuity that ignored the aliens' careful, cautious designs. He climbed over unstable structures, burned his hands on live conduits, and collapsed twice from exhaustion. But each time he woke, the twins were there, their tiny bodies glowing with worry and hope. "You don't have to do this," Rin said once, tears in their glowing eyes. "We will try something else. We will. We will accept the end." Ethan shook his head, fatigue lining every movement. "No," he said firmly. "Humans don't accept the end. Not if there's a chance to fix it. Not if someone asks us to care." The twins clung to his massive hands. For the first time, they realized what humans were capable of: not strength like weapons, not intelligence like machines, but the stubborn refusal to turn away from someone in need. Outside, the sky burned. Auroras twisted, lightning struck, and the planet groaned. But inside the core chamber, a human giant worked with small, fragile beings by his side. And slowly, against impossible odds, the impossible began to look like it might survive. By the time the first stars rose over the cracked horizon, Tila whispered, maybe we can be saved." Rin nodded, a small spark of hope flickering in their hearts. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, hands raw and bleeding, but his eyes glimmered with quiet determination. "We can," he said. "We will, together." And for the first time in centuries, Morel felt that maybe it had a chance, because someone, so much bigger than anyone else, had chosen to care. The night on Morel was alive with fire and electricity. The sky was no longer calm. It burned with violent auroras and pulsing lightning that struck the broken crust of the planet like endless fists. Each strike rattled the shield towers and sent waves through the molten rivers below. Tila and Rin clung to each other, their tiny bodies shaking, wings folding over themselves as if to make themselves invisible to the chaos surrounding them. Ethan stood in the middle of the core chamber, enormous even in the flickering red light, his hands blackened from burned circuits, his uniform scorched. Every breath he took was heavy, every movement forced by pain and exhaustion. But he did not stop. The core pulsed violently, threatening to erupt at any second, sending tremors through the chamber floor. "This is it," Ethan muttered, voice low but steady. "The manual reset. That's the only way." Tila and Rin's glowing eyes widened. "Manual reset," Rin whispered. "You mean someone has to stay inside?" "Someone will." Ethan looked down at them. His expression was calm, but his jaw was tight. "Yes," he said simply. "Someone has to stay. The energy surge will be too strong for the shields. If the core overloads while I'm out there, your world will be gone." Tila's wings flared in panic. "You can't," she cried. You're too big. You'll be killed." Ethan crouched down so their tiny faces were level with his. He touched Rin's hand lightly. "I don't care about size," he said softly. "I care about helping." "You asked for help," I promised. "That's enough reason for me to try Evan, if it means risking everything." The twins were silent. They had never heard words like this. The council, the generals, the high priests, they always spoke of strategy, politics, and survival. No one had ever said something so simple, so raw. so human, I will not walk away. Outside the chamber, the planet shuddered violently. One of the shield towers erupted in flames, throwing sparks into the sky like fireworks. Lightning struck molten rivers, and the wind howled like 1,000 beasts. Tila floated close to Ethan's massive leg. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice trembling. Ethan nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." The twins watched as he prepared the manual reset. It was dangerous. The core's energy streams were unstable, pulsating with red and purple light, electricity arcing unpredictably. Ethan's hands moved quickly, rewiring conduits, reconnecting broken circuits, rerouting power. Sweat and blood mixed on his skin. Sparks danced over his gloves. Yet he moved with careful precision, a human in a storm no one else could survive. Then came the moment of truth. Ethan stepped into the chamber center, where the core's energy was strongest. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered violently. The temperature rose so fast that the twins felt heat on their tiny wings, even from a distance. Ethan's massive hand pressed the final lever, and the core shuddered violently. The chamber shook. The walls cracked. Ethan's body was buffeted by invisible forces, his knees buckling under the pressure. He gritted his teeth and held on, ignoring the pain that radiated through his muscles and bones. "Stay close," he shouted to the twins. "No matter what happens, stay close to me." Lightning struck the core's containment field. Energy surged, wrapping around Ethan like a living thing. Sparks flew into the twins' eyes, forcing them to cover their faces. The human giant stood firm, muscles straining, heart pounding, refusing to let the planet die. Every calculation of the Union, every prediction, every warning, they were all wrong. He was stronger than they imagined, not because of size, but because of courage, determination, and care. Minutes passed like hours. The planet trembled beneath them, and then, slowly, the core's violent pulsing began to settle. The auroras above softened. The shield towers flickered, then stabilized. The rivers calmed. A quiet hum replaced the roar of destruction. Morel's planet, the twins' home, was alive. Ethan collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. Sweat and blood stained the floor around him. The twins rushed to his side, clinging to his massive hands. You did it," Tila whispered, voice trembling with awe. "You saved us." Ethan smiled weakly, exhaustion lining his features. "We did it," he corrected, looking at the twins. "You trusted me. You never gave up." The chamber was quiet. The world outside was quiet. For the first time in centuries, Morel had a chance to survive. And it was because one giant human, against impossible odds, had refused to look away. The twins hugged each other and looked at Ethan with glowing eyes full of gratitude. We will never forget this," Rin said softly. Ethan nodded. "You don't have to." His voice was low but firm. "Just live. That's all the thanks I need." Outside, far above the planet, the council watched. They had expected a failure. They had expected a lesson in futility. Instead, they had seen something far more dangerous: a human refusing to surrender, refusing to leave a small, desperate world to die. The stars over Morel shone a little brighter that night, because sometimes the biggest acts of heroism come from those who choose to stand when everyone else walks away. The sky over Morel had calmed, but the world below was still fragile. Rivers glowed softly, shield towers hummed with new energy, and the ground, though cracked, no longer vibrated with deadly pulses. Tila and Rin floated above the planet's surface, looking at what had been saved. Their small wings drooped from exhaustion, their faces pale with worry and relief. They had survived the storm, but at a cost that weighed heavily on their hearts. Ethan Cole lay in the core chamber, still inside the planet's central station, his body pressed against the floor. His chest rose and fell slowly, sweat and grime streaking his face, but he was alive. For a few moments, he did not move, letting his body rest after the greatest exertion of his life. Even though the core had stabilized, the strain of holding it together manually had been immense. Every human muscle had burned, every nerve screamed. But he had endured. The twins hovered closer, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Ethan Tila whispered, You saved us. You risked everything for us." Her voice trembled, carrying both awe and guilt. "You could have died. For two tiny beings like us." Ethan slowly opened one eye and smiled weakly. "You're not tiny," he said softly. "Not to me. Not to anyone who sees what matters." Rin wrapped one glowing hand around Tila's, whispering, "He is so big, not just in size, but in heart." Outside, the people of Morel began to emerge. They had been hiding, waiting for the disaster to claim their world. Now they saw it alive, shields glowing faintly, the sky calm and clear. They stared at the towering human within their planet's core, barely daring to believe what had happened. Murmurs spread like gentle wind. The human had come. He had risked everything. He had chosen to care. From the distance, the Galactic Union watched as well. Their calculations had been precise, their predictions certain. They had expected a failure, a tragedy, a lesson about human recklessness. And yet, standing amid the chaos, Ethan had done the impossible. He had survived where logic had failed. He had saved where others would have given up. The twins flew to the massive human, touching his scarred hands and wings, trembling in gratitude. "We must honor him," Tila said softly, "though no words can capture what he has done." Ethan chuckled faintly, a low, tired sound. "No honors, no statues," he said. "Just live. Live and keep trying. That's enough for me." The Council of the Galactic Union remained distant, debating quietly. Some whispered that humans were reckless, emotional, foolish. Others, however, were silent. Even they had to admit the truth. This human had changed something fundamental. He had reminded them that size, power, and status were not everything. Sometimes courage and heart mattered more than any army, any technology, or any title. As the twins guided Ethan out of the core chamber, the world around them seemed to hum with quiet gratitude. Morel's skies, no longer violently pulsing, now reflected soft, glowing auroras. The land seemed to breathe again. Even in their weakened state, the twins could feel hope rising in the hearts of their people. Tila glanced up at Ethan, her tiny face shining with tears. "You did not have to do this," she whispered. "No one else would have tried, but you. You believed in us." Ethan ruffled her small wings gently, the motion careful and protective. "Belief isn't enough," he said softly. "You needed someone to act, someone to risk it. That's all a human can do." The twins stayed near him, their small glowing forms a quiet contrast to his towering frame. And in that moment, they realized something extraordinary. Humans were more than their size, their weapons, or their political influence. They were more than even their courage. They were capable of choosing, of standing when others ran, of caring when everyone else turned away. The day faded, and Morel's first night in centuries felt calm. Stars twinkled softly above, reflecting in the oceans and rivers. The twins floated silently beside the giant human, realizing that a single act of care had changed everything. For the first time, the planet felt safe. And for the first time, the twins understood what it meant to be seen not for what they were, but for what they hoped to become. Ethan, massive and exhausted, looked at the glowing twins and whispered, "It's not over yet. But at least, tonight we survived together." The twins glowed brighter in response. In a universe that often judged life by size or strength, they had learned the truth. The biggest acts could come from those who simply refused to look away. The sun rose over Mir, casting soft light on the scars of the planet. Rivers shimmered calmly, shield towers hummed steadily, and the cracked crust no longer glowed red. The planet had survived, but those who watched from the surface still feared the worst. Ethan Cole had not emerged from the core chamber. For hours, Tila and Rin floated nervously above him, their wings trembling, small hands gripping each other tightly. He might not have made it," Rin whispered, their voice breaking. "Even a giant human cannot survive that." Tila's glowing eyes were wide with worry. "We saw him work. He risked everything. But the energy, the pressure," she shivered. "We have to believe he survived. We have to." The twins hovered beside the chamber entrance, waiting for something, anything, to appear. And then, a faint movement caught their eyes. A hand massive and scarred pushed against the floor. A moment later, a shoulder followed, and then Ethan himself rose slowly into view. His uniform was torn. Burns covered his hands and arms. Sweat and blood streaked his face, and every breath came with a groan. But he was alive. Tila and Rin gasped in unison. He's alive," Tila cried, her tiny voice breaking. Tears flowed freely as she floated closer. You survived." Ethan gave a weak smile, exhaustion lining every feature, but there was fire in his eyes. "Told you," he whispered, his voice low and tired. "Humans, we're stubborn. We don't give up easily." The twins could hardly believe it. All calculations, all predictions, all warnings had said the human could not survive. Yet here he was, alive. Somehow, the galaxy had misjudged him. Misjudged humanity. Rin floated beside him, small wings quivering. We thought it was impossible," Rin admitted. "We thought we would lose you." Ethan looked down at them, his massive form bending carefully so as not to crush their tiny bodies. "Impossible is just a word," he said softly. "We keep trying. We stand up. We fight. That's what humans do. That's what anyone should do when someone needs help." Outside, the people of Morel began to gather. They had been watching, hiding, unsure of what had happened to their savior. Now they saw him emerge from the chamber, bruised, battered, but alive. Their glowing voices rose in awe and celebration. The smallest species in the galaxy had called for help, and a human had answered. A human had survived where all others would have failed. The twins floated close to Ethan's hands, touching his scarred fingers. "You gave everything for us," Tila whispered, "even when it could have killed you." Ethan smiled faintly, still catching his breath. "Not everything," he said. "Just what was needed. And you You trusted me enough to let me try. It was then that the council, who had expected failure, observed in stunned silence. Calculations had failed. Predictions had failed. Every being present had believed that a human giant could not survive what had just occurred. Yet there he stood, proof that the smallest voices could inspire the largest hearts. The twins realized something profound. Humans were not only strong, they were capable of courage, sacrifice, and stubborn hope. And sometimes that made them more powerful than any army, any machine, or any council decree. Ethan slowly rose to his full height, careful of his injuries. He looked at the glowing twins, their small forms reflecting relief, hope, and trust. "It's done," he said. "Your planet is alive. You can rebuild. You can continue, and we survived this together." Tila's tears fell freely. "You didn't just save us," she whispered. "You reminded us of what it means to care, of what it means to fight for life when everyone else walks away." Rin nodded, their wings glowing brighter than ever. "We will never forget you," Rin said softly. "Ever?" Ethan lowered himself to one knee so they could hover close. "You don't need to remember me like that," he said. "Remember this instead. Never ignore someone who asks for help. Stand up, try. That's all it takes to make a difference." For the first time, the Galactic Union understood the truth about humanity. It was not brute force that defined them. It was their courage, their resilience, and their refusal to abandon hope. A single human had survived what the galaxy had declared impossible. A single human had given life to a dying world, and for Tila and Rin, the twins from the tiniest planet. He was more than a giant in size, he was a hero in heart. The sun shone softly over Morel, and the planet seemed to breathe again. Life had returned, and the galaxy had witnessed a truth it could not deny. Humans were capable of greatness in ways no one could have calculated. Years passed on Morel, but the story of that day never faded. The planet healed slowly, green shoots pushing through cracked soil, rivers returning to gentle flow, and the sky painting itself with peaceful auroras. Tila and Rin, once the smallest and most fragile beings on their world, now carried a quiet confidence in their glowing eyes. They had survived not by power, not by armies, not by politics, but because someone so much bigger and stronger had chosen to care. Ethan Cole returned to Morel several times, each visit leaving a mark on the planet and its people. His massive figure moving through the twin suns' light became a symbol. Children pointed, eyes wide with awe, whispering stories of the human giant who had faced a dying planet and refused to turn away. Adults told each other about his courage, his patience, his sacrifice. Even the Galactic Union recorded the events carefully, unable to ignore that a single human had defied every expectation. The twins had changed too. They taught their people to value not size or strength, but heart and action. When a small alien came forward with a need, they listened. They helped. And when the smallest voices were heard, great things could happen. All of this, they knew, had begun because Ethan had knelt before them and promised he would not ignore them. One evening, as the twin moons rose over a healed valley, Tila and Rin floated beside Ethan. The human looked different now, battle scars fading, yet his hands still bore the marks of the core chamber. He smiled down at the tiny twins, their forms glowing softly in the moonlight. "It's quiet here now," he said. "The storms have passed. The planet is safe." Rin looked up at him, eyes shining. "You gave everything for us," they said softly. You risked your life when no one else would. You believed in small beings like us. Why did you do it? Ethan crouched, careful not to overshadow their tiny forms. Because someone asked for help, he said simply. And humans, we do what we can when we see someone in need. That's all it takes to change a world. Tila's tiny hand rested on his massive finger. We will never forget you, she whispered. You taught us the truth, that size does not matter when it comes to